What do you say, everybody? Welcome to Monday Night Quarterback. You have waited all week, and now your show is back on the air. Make sure you like and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up and hit the bell as we hang out with you like we do here on the Bama Insider YouTube channel. Show's brought to you by Westgate Luxury Condominiums. Those beautiful condos are right there next to Bryant-Denny Stadium. 1 to 5 bedroom units that go from 900 to 3,000 square feet. They're fantastic, luxurious with the oversized balconies right there next to the football stadium. And game day, 8A game, regular season games, we do the post-game show from the roof of the Westgate. So would love to get you guys to check it out, and you can easily at westgateal.com. I'm Mick Gillespie. Clint Lamb joins us every Monday. What's up, dude? Feel like I haven't seen you in months.
It's been a while, hadn't it? Last week I had a cold. If I still sound, I still don't think I'm 100%, but I'm close enough. I mean, we're gonna let this thing, we're gonna let it go, man. I missed last week and I hated it, so I'm glad to be back with you, Mick. How you doing tonight, brother?
Yeah, good to see you, man. It's going around too. It's that time of year, where you're kind of like getting ready for summer and doing all those other things, but you just kind of pick up those colds, and there's a mix of a lot of different things you can get these days. You can get the cold, you can get the flu, you can get COVID, right? But it's good to have you back on, man. I always miss talking to you, and I love when we get to hang out, and there's a lot to talk about. I mean, we could sit here and probably do an hour and a half, just you and I, the 2 hours maybe, but let's get right into it. While Alabama was in the midst of an SEC basketball beatdown, which we're going to talk about because we have to, because it was amazing. It was a thing of beauty, by the way. I've been in a good mood ever since Sunday. But the Panthers and the Bears struck a deal. So it was like breaking news, everyone. Guess what? The Bears traded the number 1 pick to the Carolina Panthers, and that brings us to the Bryce Young conversation. CJ Stroud, Bryce Young. I don't think Will Levis, Anthony Richardson are going to be guys that are going to be picked. One of those two guys, I think, at the top of that list. And I'm curious to hear what you think.
Yeah, it was a interesting timing, wasn't it? I'm sorry that it wasn't the Baltimore Ravens. Sorry.
I would love that.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool. Trade Lamar Jackson, figure out a way to get up there.
I would do it.
No teams are interested in Lamar Jackson. That's kind of crazy as well. But yeah, the Carolina Panthers, to me, I don't think it's as good of a landing spot as Houston would be. In a lot of ways, I mean, granted, you would always love to see, a talent and a personality, a good person like Bryce Young go number 1 overall and have that, forever attached to their name. But at the same time, I mean, I think that Houston right now is set up for success a lot more than Carolina, especially because Carolina just traded away far and away their only pass catching option or consistent pass catching option, and DJ Moore in that deal to move up to number 1. So that they don't have a lot to work with at receiver. Tight end Ian Thomas, very mediocre player. They got a couple of really good offensive linemen, Taylor Moton and Ike Ekwonu, their first round pick last year, and Brady Christensen. So they got a couple of pieces up front, but from a weapons standpoint, there's just not a whole lot there. And I understand Houston, from a historical perspective, has not been a great franchise, but they've got John Mechie. They got a couple of offensive linemen who are promising. They got Nico Collins, a big-bodied X-style receiver. Got a second first-round pick there at number 12. D'Amico Ryans is their head coach. They brought in that, offensive-minded guy from the San Francisco 49ers to be their offensive coordinator. We all have seen what Kyle Shanahan's offense looks like. Think Bryce Young would do well in that offense. They got, Damian Pierce at running back. So I actually really like the potential of the Houston Texans. And, like I said, with Carolina, I think with, Frank Reich, I think CJ Stroud would probably be a better schematic fit, even though I think either would do well. But I just don't know if I want Bryce going there, considering, the lack of picks, the lack of weapons. I don't know how they remedy a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, it's a good question. And I guess that's one of the things that we care about. We just want to see him in the best possible situation. What do you guys think in the comments section? Great to see you, Jersey Dolphins. I know where you'd like to see him, but you already have a Bama quarterback that's coming back. Lakeith, and Tristan and Johnny Quick, all you guys that are hanging out with us, James and Henry Reynolds. Roll Tide, everybody. We really appreciate you being here on the show. Thumbs up as you hang out with us on Monday Night QB. Look, I'm all about him going to Houston, and I agree with you. I think D'Amico Ryans is going to be an excellent head coach. I think that it's going to be a team that plays defense and that is able to run the ball. I watched some of their games last year, and I'll tell you what, even though the record wasn't great, they were improving as the season went on. And so I'm all about the Houston Texans being a good landing spot. The Carolina Panthers haven't had the first pick since they took Cam Newton. And you're right. They don't have a whole lot of pieces. They've had instability at the head coaching spot, which is the same thing with Houston, except we love this guy. And it's going to be really great to see him, have his own franchise and team to work with. But I don't know. I mean, I'm with you, man. I just think it'd be an easier fit in Houston.
Yeah, and one thing about a Bryce Young style of player, you don't have to necessarily have the offensive line in front of him, even though I think if you're worried about durability being an issue in the NFL because he's, I guess he was listed at the combine or weighed in at 204 pounds, he's not going to play at that. He's going to be a lot closer to the 190 to 194 that he played while he was at Alabama. He just loaded up on weight for the combine. But if you're worried about that, you definitely want to make sure that you get plenty of protection in front of him, whether he ends up in Carolina or he ends up in Houston. Carolina's already got, a pretty good core of offensive linemen, but I also think that Houston, despite the fact that the entire unit has not looked very good, I think they have some core pieces there with, Laramie Tunsil and Titus Howard, a former first-round pick, and they drafted a first-round guy in Kenyon Green last year. Granted, I don't think he's really a schematic fit with what they're going to be trying to do with their blocking scheme, but at the same time, former first-round talent, still a young guy, still could show some improvement and at least be serviceable for them. And then you got the number 12 overall pick. You can use that to get another receiver. You can use that on another offensive lineman, which is what I would do. But I just think that he could be a lot more effective in Houston than he would be in Carolina. But even if, they don't have a good enough offensive line in either spot, I still think that he's enough of a talent where, he can make some things happen even without the protection. It just doesn't need to be a long-term issue.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Hey, great having all you guys with us here on the Bama Insider YouTube channel, talking with Clint Lamb. You can follow Clint Lamb every day at BamaInsider.com, $29.99 from now until August 31st. Get all that Alabama coverage, including spring practice, which is about to start next Monday. And Clint's on the message board with our buddy Jimmy Stein, who's coming up, Joseph Hastings, Andrew Bone. We're getting bigger and better on this site, and we want you guys to be a part of it. So, again, $9.99 a month or $29.99 is the special right now until August 31st. So you can get into all these topics on there with the guys, and they cover Alabama every day. And one thing that we're going to be talking about and we're going to be looking for here in the coming weeks, and I'm actually excited. I mean, things are about to pick up with spring practice coming, but who steps up in Alabama secondary with all of these departures? I'm just going to throw one guy's name out there. I have a feeling, call it a hunch, that this guy named Kool-Aid is going to step up.
Yeah, he stepped up last year. And what's wild, and a lot of people won't admit this, but going into last year, everybody was excited about Eli Ricks. There was some buzz growing about Terrion Arnold. A lot of people felt like Kool-Aid should have been the odd man out. They didn't like what he looked like as a freshman, even though, a lot of us were trying to say, hey, I mean, he was a true freshman. He was kind of thrown out there a little bit sooner than Alabama had wanted him to because they had injuries to Josh Jobe and Jalen Armour-Davis. And he found himself in some pretty tough situations. But I think that because he faced those situations, that's only going to help him moving forward. And last year with experience, and he continued to get better at his craft, and he continued to learn Alabama's defense and get more comfortable in it, he ended up becoming one of the best cornerbacks in college football. And so I'm excited about what he's going to be able to do this year. Who starts opposite him? Kyrie Jackson's gone. Eli Ricks is gone. Terrion Arnold got a lot of starts last year. Is he going to continue to play corner? Does he kick inside to start? Does he move to safety? I personally think he's going to remain out on the perimeter, and I think he's probably the projected starter. But you've got a lot of other guys as well. Brian Branch is gone. Jordan Battle's gone. DeMarco Hellams, of course. So 3 safeties or safety slash stars. You've got Malachi Moore coming back, who's got a lot of experience. Like I said, you got Arnold and Kool-Aid. And then you got guys like Earl Little Jr. and, Caleb Downs, the 5-star safety. That's another guy who I think can get in the mix. So they still got a lot of talent on the back half of their defense. But it's just a matter of, getting into spring practice and figuring out where some of these guys stand.
Yeah, and I guess that this is one of those spots where there was such a logjam last year. We thought that the secondary was going to come together a little bit better than it did, right? And I guess defensively overall, it wasn't a terrible year, but for all the talent, it just didn't feel like it was as dominant as we thought, right?
Well,
or should be maybe.
With Jordan Battle coming back and with DeMarco Hellams, we definitely thought, hey, this is going to be a strength of the defense. And I thought it would be a lot more opportunistic. And I talked about that a lot going into last year because I thought with the experience, and I mean, Jordan Battle had some pick sixes, and I mean, you had a lot of talent on the back half of the defense. You combine that with what we thought was going to be just an absolutely dominant pass rush. And it was like, this is the makings of a historically good defense, because not only do you have the pass rush that's going to, put pressure on quarterbacks and force them into making poor decisions, but you've got guys, experienced players in the back half of your defense who can take advantage of that. And I think that Alabama falling a little bit short on the pass rushing side of things, put more strain on the secondary, and you saw it not perform as well as we would have liked to have seen. But I still think that there were some good players last year. You're going to see that reflected in the NFL draft. And I think that they continue to have a lot of NFL talent on the back half of their defense and more NFL talent coming in that's younger with guys like Caleb Downs. So I still think they're going to be really effective. But hopefully, the pass rush and everything will be able to, play off of each other a little bit better. And I do think Alabama's offensive style is also going to help and aid the defense as well. So, keep an eye on that as well.
Going to be a lot of fun to watch. And again, next Monday, we'll be talking about the first day of practice. How about that? So
can't believe it.
I know.
I'm pumped, man.
I'm too.
So many storylines, right? And we can talk about this every week, but I don't care because it's like so many things are developing, and like the weight gain and just the way that the offense is heading is, regarding the weight gain and, the new coordinators and quarterback and field general your defense and best offensive player, best defensive player. There's just so many different things in different directions that Alabama can take it. And I'm excited to see where they go with it.
Yeah, me too. I never thought that I would say this, Clint, but I'm glad that I'm saying this. And I mean this. I never thought that Alabama would be the number 1 overall seed going into the NCAA tournament. They're number 1 in the country right now. They ran through the SEC tournament field like a hot knife through butter. They were challenged by Missouri for a little bit, and then they turned it on. The defensive performance that they put together yesterday to win the SEC championship over Texas A&M, who I think is a really good basketball team, was legit. This team's rolling. Brandon Miller and company, the number 1 overall seed. And not only did they win the SEC regular season, but they win the SEC championship in the tournament. They've done that now 2 times in the last 3 years. Nate Oates has definitely solidified himself as one of the great coaches in college basketball. And Alabama, I don't think they've ever been – it's only been 3 years, right? But I don't think they've ever been at a higher level going into the tournament.
I just don't know that we've ever seen a team like this in Tuscaloosa. Now, granted, there's probably some of the old guard that could come in and throw a couple of teams that I didn't get a chance to watch. I'm sure there are other teams certainly in the conversation, but for me personally, just the way that they can beat you and the amount of depth and the fact that they win on the offensive end and they win on the defensive end, like they don't have to win the same way every night. And I think that's what makes this team so special. And just, Charles Bediako and what he was able to do in the tournament, both on the offensive and defensive end, and, Javon Quinterly and him being able to kind of be that, guy who can facilitate for others when he wasn't scoring against Missouri. He only had 1 point, but he had 7 assists. He was being able to create for others. Really, the only player right now that I have any concern with is Mark Sears. I don't think he's been playing his best basketball. I think he's something like 4 for 27 over his last 4 games as far as, from the 3-point line. Would like to see him play a little bit better and get a little bit more of that swagger back. But outside of him, a lot of guys are playing really good basketball, and it's the perfect time because, hey, it's March.
Yeah, no doubt. Look, I don't think that this team has even shot the ball extremely well in a while. They didn't, they made some threes. Obviously, they played a lot better in the tournament than they had leading into the tournament, right? But just some threes with the way that they play defense and the way that they attack the basket makes them formidable. And they're going to be in Birmingham, which is really cool, for the first two rounds. And so is Auburn, ironically. Houston not too happy about that. They're a number one seed too, and they got to play Auburn in potentially the second round. Second round for Alabama would be the winner of Maryland and West Virginia, which is an intriguing matchup. Two teams that could beat you if you don't play your type of basketball. Alabama hasn't had a lot of success in the tournament. They've only made it to the Elite Eight one time. They've never been to the Final Four. And this team has all the tools. I'm going to tell you what Chris Stewart said to me. This team can win it all. And I believe him, and that was before the SEC tournament. I was a little concerned about the way that some of the starts that they had, the intensity at the beginning of the games. It looks like they were just bored a little bit.
Well, and we talk about ways to win. I mean, they've come out and they've completely creamed teams and just looked fantastic from the start. We've seen that at various points. We've seen them come out and really struggle early. I mean, I think they started like 2 for 20. What was it, against Mississippi State, maybe?
Yeah.
As far as from the 3-point line, and then they hit some there at the end to make the percentage look a lot better. But the fact that they got down against Arkansas, the fact they got down by 17 against Auburn, it's like with this team, you don't have to necessarily worry about them being completely out of it. Like if they get down and they're kind of struggling, once they start figuring things out, because they're so good defensively, once they start figuring things out on that end of the court, you can expect better defense and the other team to not score as many points. And then on the flip side, once they figure out, it's like they spend a lot of the early portions of the game just throwing up threes, and they'll do that throughout the entire game. But if they figure out, okay, we're not shooting the basketball well, they just start driving it with a lot more intensity and finishing at the basket. And that's what makes them so special, is their ability to, like I said, win in a variety of ways. It's been so much fun to watch. Like regardless of how it turns out from here, I know that if Alabama were to lose, in the second round or the Sweet 16 or even maybe the Elite Eight, there are going to be a lot of fans who are disappointed. But no one can deny up to this point, this team has been so much fun to cover because there's just so much talent all over the court. And, like I said, just so many different ways they can beat you.
Yeah, look, they've held it together. It hasn't been an easy season in a lot of ways. Brandon Miller's dunk in that game, right towards the end of the second half when they were pulling away, was just unbelievable. I mean, Alabama has never had a Brandon Miller. They've had good players. Right. They've had good players, but they haven't had – and to put him on a team like this, that even without him is really good, and unselfish. Bediako on defense was so good. Quinterly, it's a mixed bag with Quinterly, but he's been scoring a lot. He's starting to find his shot. Don't turn it over. Protect the ball. Griffin's been good. Sears, you talked about Sears, got to get some points out of him. But there's so many different ways that this team can get you, and it's all about the intensity to me. I mean, when they start fast, they're really hard to beat.
Well, and what's crazy, I think everyone knows Brandon Miller is the heart and soul of this team. No one is denying that whatsoever. But Mick, I mean, let's say that he wasn't on this team. I still think it's a tournament caliber squad.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what's wild. And I think, when you add arguably the best player in college basketball on top of what would already be a solid tournament team, in my opinion, that's where you get, hey, this is a national championship caliber squad. I mean, it's been, phenomenal to see how they've grown. Have they gone through some rough spots? Absolutely. And I'm talking about on the court. Everybody knows off the court, there's been some rough patches along the way. But just on the court, man, I mean, they've struggled at times. They always figure out a way to get things done. They never, you would think in years past, that Oklahoma beatdown that they took on the road,
that
could have been a season derailing type of game. That's just demoralizing, and they're never able to fully recover. Very next game, they're absolutely dominating. I don't remember who they were playing, Vanderbilt or I think it
Vandy.
was Vanderbilt. Yeah. They won by what, 57
Yeah,
points?
yeah.
I mean, they're just their ability to overcome adversity, whether it's in a game or, after a poor performance, truly special.
Yeah, look, the win, some of the wins that they had this year, the win at Auburn, special game because they didn't play their best, but they beat Auburn, who's a really good team, by the way, at their place in the hostilest of environments. I thought that one was really good. And then, down the stretch, you could definitely tell that I feel like emotionally the team was really having a tough time. And they still found a way to get out on the court and get the job done. They had to come from behind against Arkansas. They had to come from behind against Auburn. They win the regular season SEC, and then they go into this tournament, and they just look like a team that has had a weight lifted off of their back.
That is exactly what it looks like, Mick. Yeah, you're 100% right. It's like everything that was going on, I think, really started to put a cloud over things. And there for a short period of time, they were still figuring out ways to win, and they weren't playing great basketball, and they looked a little bit rattled. In the SEC tournament, you saw, even though they were shooting bad at times, and it wasn't like they were completely perfect throughout every game, you didn't see those kind of, you didn't feel like they were off, like something wasn't right with them. You just felt like, hey, the shots aren't dropping right now. They'll start dropping, but um, for the most part, good decision making. Had some turnovers here or there, but this team looked completely different in the tournament, and everybody talks about peaking at the right time. I think Alabama's definitely back on an upward trajectory.
I think that's a great way to end it today. Anything that we can expect from you this week, BamaInsider.com.
We're loaded down, Mick. Today we did kind of the offensive skill position, depth chart projections. That was a lot of fun, and it's not just, hey, this is who I think is going to start. I mean, it's close to 3,000 words. Like, I really try to dive into every position, go through my thought process. Tomorrow's going to be the offensive line. Then we're going to do the defensive front, the outside linebackers, and the defensive line. And then we'll do the off-ball linebackers in the secondary on Thursday. So pretty much every day it's going to be depth chart projections, really in depth. Also did our mailbag today with some great questions from the subscribers. Jimmy's doing his kind of spring, football roster countdown. That's been phenomenal work. Bone and Hastings continue to do great things as far as, on the recruiting front. So right now, with the NFL draft coming up next month, with the fact that spring football starts, a week from the day, the NCAA tournament's coming up here in a couple of days. Now is the time to be hopping on board with Bama Insider.
Yep, $29.99 from now until August 31st. So take advantage of that, or $9.99 a month. But that's where we are every day. We're here some on the YouTube channel, but we're 24/7 over on the site, and we want you guys to be a part of it as we change the face of teen coverage. We want you guys to be there and be a part of it. Thank you, Clint.
Absolutely, mate. Good talking to you, brother.
Always a great time talking to you, my friend. All right, let's switch gears. We're gonna dip into a little bit of recruiting. Not a whole lot of news right now, but a man that's always on the scene is our good friend Joseph Hastings. So he's going to jump on, and there he is. Look, I know we've got hoops, we've got spring practice coming up, we've got the NFL draft. And this is kind of a quiet time for recruiting, but we had to get you on just to find out what's going on. Just give us a little bit of the skinny right now, and one of them includes an elite corner that Alabama's trying to haul in.
Yep, Mick. Xavier Brown out of Mater Dei High School. Alabama a couple of cycles ago was pursuing Domani Jackson, who kind of has some of those similar traits to Xavier in terms of being from Mater Dei, being one of the more coveted cornerbacks in the country. Ohio State kind of being high in the mix. USC being involved there. So with Alabama. The Crimson Tide hosted Xavier on campus for a visit back on January 28th. Their second junior day event of the year. He enjoyed his time there. Seemed like the returns were really well. He's looking to take a visit to Alabama this spring. He's somebody to pay close attention to. Alabama's really high on him. He's high on the Crimson Tide. And, obviously there's the hometown appeal, the in-state factor that is the USC Trojans, and how exceptional they've been on the recruiting trail under Lincoln Riley. But Alabama's definitely a player here. Can expect them to get an official visit from Xavier down the line. They're currently in his top 4 that he released a couple of days ago. It's same with Ohio State, USC, Oregon. So it's pretty interesting that he narrowed his recruitment down this far, this early in the process, so to speak. You see a lot of recruits kind of taking things out, waiting until later in the summer, maybe during the season, or even during early signing period. But it seems like his recruitment process is kind of being sped up now. He knows which schools are his top ones and who his finalists are. So yeah, Alabama's high in the mix here. Going to be interesting to see if they can get him on campus either in March or April. But yeah, the Crimson Tide are sitting in a pretty good spot with Brown right now. Alabama also made top schools list for a couple of other prospects: Marcellus Williams, Timothy Lewis. But Zamian's the one to pay attention to right now in terms of how heavily involved they are in his interest in the Crimson Tide.
Joseph Hastings, always available at BamaInsider.com. Make sure you check him out, him and Andrew Bone and our team with On3. Killing it, constantly keeping you updated on everything going on recruiting-wise. And one of those questions that we always have, who are a couple targets that Alabama might flip? And I saw you kind of posted some of that on Twitter recently and on the site, BamaInsider.com, you talked about it.
Yes, a couple of prospects from IMG Academy, got to speak with them at IMG's Pro Day earlier this month. Jonathan Eccles and Ellis Robinson. Ellis is committed to Georgia. We've talked about him before, and Eccles is a tight end committed to Tennessee. He's the number 3 tight end in the country. I know that's a position that Alabama fans are really kind of hoping to have success in recruiting, which is interesting because they signed 4 in 2022. They brought in 2 in December and CJ Dipper from Maryland, and then Ty Lockwood, 4-star out of Tennessee. But, Eccles would be a huge flip. Not only are you taking him away from Tennessee, you're adding him to your roster as well. He has a lot of potential, was actually somebody who was being considered at edge at one time. But it is, going to be a tight end recruit for Alabama if they're able to land him. He says that he's in touch with Joe Cox multiple times per week, looking to take a visit to Alabama. So he's a name to pay attention to, as with Ellis Robinson, committed to Georgia. Those are the battles you're going to have to win. Alabama won them more than Georgia won them last cycle. They beat out the Bulldogs for Caleb Downs, Justice Haynes, a couple of really, really big time recruits in the state of Georgia, the top 2 in the Peach State last cycle. Ellis is not from Georgia, but he felt prioritized by the Bulldogs. He felt like they were a program that was really prioritizing him and made him feel comfortable, and him and his family too. So, it's going to be a tough flip. He seemed pretty locked in when I spoke with him, but Alabama's going to receive an official visit here in June. So, in terms of flip targets to talk about in the 2024 cycle, Ellis Robinson's name is probably at the top of a lot of people's list just because of the Georgia factor, needing cornerbacks in this cycle. Ellis is definitely up there. Then you also have DeMarcus Riddick. It's kind of 1A, 1B with Ellis and DeMarcus because he's also committed to Georgia. He's an in-state recruit. Alabama's really heavily involved here. So is Auburn. So, in terms of flip targets, it's really Ellis, DeMarcus, and then you got a couple of others, Jonathan Eccles and Jeremiah Smith from Ohio State. But those are the kind of the names to pay attention to right now in terms of flip targets. Big battle
from the linebacker from Clayton. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all shakes out. And Joseph will be on BamaInsider.com updating you guys on that. So make sure that you check it out. All right, last question I have for you today. Jimmy Stein coming up next. We're going to talk more Alabama football and some basketball coming up. But give me a rundown of the recruiting calendar and what we can expect coming up.
Yes, so next month, prospects can start taking official visits to schools, not just the University of Alabama. The Crimson Tide didn't play host to any prospects for official visits last spring. It may change this time around. We haven't heard of any scheduled official visits for the month of April, but that's always something to kind of pay attention to, those early official visits. I mentioned Zabian Brown. Maybe he decides to use his next visit to Alabama as an official. We'll see about that. It's a long way from California to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, but that's kind of a big update in the recruiting calendar. Also, from April 15th until May 31st is the evaluation period. That's when coaches can go back on the road, start evaluating prospects in person. That's a little bit different than the January and December evaluation periods when they were able to go and see them. But, it's kind of toward the tail end of their seasons. Some of them were already done with their 2022 seasons by the point that Alabama has seen them. So, this will be good in terms of being able to see them in person, see them in pads, seeing them go up against, people on the football field, not just, passing by essentially. So that's going to be pretty important. And then in June, Alabama played host to dozens of official visitors in the month of June. Last year, they ended up with several commitments from them. Pay attention to the month of June. That could be a really big one for the Crimson Tide in terms of getting recruits on campus who are high on the program and who may be close to making a decision. So that's obviously a month to pay attention to. And it's going to cut off after the second to last weekend of June. I believe it's the 23rd to the 24th, if I'm not mistaken, or the 24th to the 25th. There will be a dead period that runs from June 26th until July 24th. That's when prospects cannot step foot on campuses. You'll probably see a lot of decisions being made there. And so that's June is a really crucial time, as is these next few weeks here in March and April in terms of getting recruits on campus. So yeah, that's our kind of recruiting calendar rundown, just to keep you all up to date, kind of in the know here. It's going to be a fun time, even though there's a lot of attention on basketball and football spring practice coming up. You're going to see some recruits make some surprise visits here, and we're going to keep you all updated on Bama Insider.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Joseph. And don't forget, check out his work, BamaInsider.com, where he's covering recruiting every day. Now that we're part of On3, we've got an army of people that are out there, the best in the business, giving you the scouting reports, giving you the expert opinions on guys, and knowing these players and where they could end up. Joseph, another fantastic job. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Mick. See you next week, man.
Let's do it next Monday. There'll be a lot more to talk about between now and then. Guys, as you hang out with us here on Monday Night Quarterback, make sure you like and subscribe. Hit the thumbs up and the bell. Kyle Henderson, Clint Lamb, Jimmy Stein have all been doing pop-up shows in the morning. You guys are going to want to be a part of that. So make sure that you hit the bell so when those guys go live, or tomorrow when Andrew Bone does his recruiting show, or Nate Oates speaks, or Nick Saban, and you're right there with us. So with all the things that are going on, the best way to kind of be there when we go live is by hitting the bell. All right, well, let's bring him on. I call him the dean of Bama Insider, the guy who's been covering the Crimson Tide since there was a bear on the sideline, and a lot to talk about. What's up, Jimmy?
I don't know that I was covering the Crimson Tide when I was 12, but I was really interested. Really interested at 12. So I was somewhat.
You were a student prodigy. We just didn't want to, take that away from you. So there's so much to talk about right now. You've been through this before. I've been through this before. You go into these, spring practices, and what we look for are position battles. Not to say that it's going to be decided. I've said it before. I can't wait to see what happens at quarterback, but give me your thoughts. What are you thinking position battle wise?
There's battles everywhere. I mean, there really is. And I think, it's a cliche that coaches like to say that every position is open. No one has a spot. And it's partly a cliche and mostly true. I mean, very few Alabama players right now have a spot. Now, there's a handful of players that you'd say, okay, pretty sure J.C. Latham's going to be one of the tackles. Pretty sure Kool-Aid is at one of the corners. Pretty sure Dallas Turner is going to play a significant role at outside linebacker. That's all true. But really, one thing that's notable about this particular team that will start practicing next Monday, Mick, is I see position battles at literally every position group. There's 10 position groups on the team. That's why there's 10 assistant coaches that coach them, or technically 9 this go around. But at quarterback, we know there's a battle between Jalen Milroe and Ty Simpson. That's well documented. How about at running back, Mick? Alabama returns Jace McClellan and Roydell Williams, neither of whom have been a starting running back at Alabama, but they're seniors. They're listed as seniors on the roster. They've both been playing for parts of 3 seasons. But you have Jamarian Miller, Jam Miller. I think all of us expect Jam Miller to make a run, not only for the backup job, but for the starting job at running back, because he seems like he might even be a better fit in this new offense that's going to be with an emphasis on the physicality. Maybe having a bigger, more physical back is something that the offense and Tommy Rees is going to be interested in. So there's a battle at running back. Huge battles at wide receiver. I think there's about 6 guys, Mick, that have really separated themselves at wide receiver over the rest of the crew. And I can name them real quick. Jermaine Burton, Ja'Cory Brooks, Isaiah Bond, Kobe Prentice, Kendrick Law. Those 5, and I would add Malik Benson based on his junior college hype and the buzz from inside the building that we all hear. It's not a secret. It's not inside scoop, although it partly is. But the point, Malik Benson has been incredibly impressive starting in those bowl practices. And we expect Bama insider Malik Benson to easily be a part of the first team rotation. So that's 6 receivers, with the question being, will there be a 7th with the first team rotation? Will it be Emmanuel Henderson? Will it be a freshman like Jalen Hale? Will it be a redshirt freshman like Shaz Preston? Or is it just going to be those 6? And if it's those 6, in what order will they be in? You're not going to play the 6th guy the same number of snaps that you play your first guy. So what's going to be the order in the rotation? Offensive line certainly battles. J.C. Latham returns. Tyler Booker returns. Seth McLaughlin returns. That's 3 building blocks. Darian Dalcourt returns as a guy that started a lot of games. He's a guy that certainly you pencil in early and see if he can hold off some of this big-time competition. But there's no doubt there's a minimum of 1 spot, and in reality, probably 2 spots open on the offensive line for a returning player like Terrence Ferguson or Jaden Roberts, or for a freshman like Caden Proctor, or a redshirt freshman like Elijah Pritchett. There are open spots there. That will be a battle. Defensively, 6 guys return on the defensive line that have played first-team snaps. That's a lot. But in what order will they be? Will Justin Aboigbe be healthy enough to practice this spring? Can a freshman like James Smith make a run at that first-team rotation? Linebacker Dallas Turner and Chris Braswell are back. Mick, I tell you, I think, last year they played 3 or 4 outside linebackers. I think it could happen again. Who's going to be that 3rd outside linebacker? Is it Jeremiah Alexander? Is it Quandarius Robinson? Will they be able to hold off Keon Keeley, the freshman, when he shows up this summer at inside backer? Maybe the best battle in the whole team. Deontay Lawson is the only returning guy with starting experience at Alabama. But here comes Trez Marshall from Georgia. Here comes the JUCO Justin Jefferson. Sean Murphy got playing experience late last year. Jahad Campbell got playing experience late last year. Kendrick Blackshire's his 3rd year in the program. Inside linebacker might be the best battle spot on the whole team outside of maybe quarterback. And at DB, several were lost to the draft. Brian Branch gone. Eli Ricks gone. Jordan Battle gone. DeMarco Hellam's gone. That's 4 guys that played first-team snaps. So 4 spots are up for grabs. There are battles at every single position, which is good and bad. It's bad in the sense you don't have as many established veterans. It's good in the sense that competition makes everyone else better. I know that was a lot, but there's a lot of battles.
Yeah, look, I agree with you. I think you just said you nailed it. You're right on both. You kind of like to have those veteran guys, but at the same time, it's nice having the competition because you're going to have to play your best to get out on the football field, and that's only going to make both players or all 3 or whoever's in that battle better. One area where we don't expect to see any competition is in the kicking and the punt game, right? Will Reichard, who did excellent last year, coming back, gives you, a very experienced kicker. James Burnup, the punter. What do you think?
Well, they're both back. Now, obviously, Will Reichard's going to be the kicker, and we don't talk about him enough in the sense that, boy, what an advantage, what an asset for Alabama to have perhaps the best kicker in college football. I think he's the best kicker in University of Alabama school history. It's really cool that somebody like that still has another year of eligibility, still has another year of being on the team when he in so many ways is Alabama's GOAT. I mean, hey, the numbers are the number. Kicker, it's a little easier, Mick. I mean, you could argue forever about who's the best outside linebacker between Derek Thomas and Cornelius Bennett and Will Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
You could argue forever about who's the best offensive lineman at Alabama. But the kicking, that's pretty straightforward, isn't it? It's about how many field goals have you made? What's your percentage of makes? What about over 50 yards? That sort of thing. You can quantify the kicker spot. And by quantifying it, I think there's no question that Will Reichard is the best that Alabama's ever had. And he will go into next season as good as anyone in college football. And what a tremendous advantage, particularly to an offense that's going to have a lot of young players and a lot of new parts. Burnip, we don't really talk about him a lot, the punter, but one thing that I think wasn't really noticed was how much he improved from year one to year two. It was a bit of a mess 2 years ago in 2021 with Burnip, but when you look at his history of punting in college football, you understand why. There was no history. I never confirmed this because you don't really get to interview the punter, but I think he punted for Alabama in one of the first college football games he ever saw. I mean, that's how little experience he had. He just had this huge leg, came from the Australia punting camps. But man, what a leap he made in year two. He went from, gosh, this isn't working out very well to, he's a pretty average SEC punter. That's pretty good. When you're average in the SEC, meaning for an SEC guy, I don't know, he's seventh in the league, eighth, ninth, right in the middle. Hey, you're right in the middle of the best conference in the whole sport. So really, he was pretty good last year, certainly improved. But Mick, there's every reason to expect he could make the same leap. And I'm telling you, if he improves as much from year two to year three as he did from 1 to 2, he literally could be maybe the best punter in the league. And I know that sounds crazy because I'm talking about the same guy that punted 2 years ago, but he showed up with no experience. He learned how to do it in year one. He got much better at it in year two. I think we may see, if not an all-star in year three, something close to an all-star, which would make him the best punter Alabama's had since the J.K. Scott heyday. So I think Alabama is in good hands with both guys who kick. Alabama returns maybe the best punt returner in college football. Kool-Aid McKinstry has the numbers to argue that he may be the best punt returner. He's certainly in the argument, but they will need a new kick returner. Jahmyr Gibbs was the primary kick returner, though we didn't house one at Alabama. He did at Georgia Tech prior to getting to Alabama. I do think Jahmyr Gibbs, no longer the kick returner, is a bit of a hole in the lineup. It'll be really interesting to see who takes over kick return. Could be Jace McClellan, could be even Jam Miller, or one of the freshman running backs like Justice Haynes, or one of the exciting young receivers like a Kendrick Law or an Isaiah Bond, who's super fast. The beauty about that is there's so many candidates and so many of these guys did that job in high school, but at kicker, punter, and punt returner, there are pieces here, Mick, to where Alabama could be very, very solid on special teams.
Let's hope so. I mean, they're going to need to be excellent in some other areas this year to win these football games, right? Because you lose your quarterback could be the number one pick in the draft, right? Your linebacker could be the number 3 pick in the draft. I mean, you're losing a lot of guys. So for this team to do well, it would be great if Will Reichard has just a year where he kicks everything, right? And he doesn't miss, which wouldn't be that far out of the realm of possibility, right? Ty Simpson throws a bunch of touchdowns to these guys, but special teams has a big year. It just feels like there were a lot of those close games on the road last year when you needed someone to come up with a big play. Special teams, a Kool-Aid punt return could be a difference in a game. You've seen it before. So having these other areas contribute could be the signature of what this team looks like.
Oh, absolutely. And let's just assume that with a new quarterback and all the newness, new offense coordinator, new defensive coordinator, there's close games. It's not crazy to assume that. I've seen the stat. I wish I could spit it out at you right now, but Alabama's played more close games in the last 2 seasons than they did in the previous 10 in terms of SEC games. In close games, special teams means everything. In a close game, it can be decided by one snap. Who's to say that won't be a snap on special teams? Whether it's a kick, whether it's a punt, maybe you're backed up in your own territory and you need to punt it out over the 50. Maybe a big punt return sets up a score when the offense has had trouble moving the ball. I just think there's so many questions on this Alabama team, Mick, offensively and defensively, that you can't help but think 1 or 2 games could come down to special teams. And it does appear that between punting, kicking, and returning punts, Alabama may have an all-star at all 3 spots.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And I'll tell you this, Jimmy, before we pivot to basketball, if Alabama's strong point if their strength is the offensive line this year, it's going to be a good season for Alabama. You talked about all those running backs. Good to see you, Sean, in the comments section, as always, my friend. And for all of you guys, thank you for hanging out with us here on the Bama Insider YouTube channel. Like and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. We do Monday Night Quarterback. I talk with Andrew Bone. Kyle Henderson's on with shows. You know, he brings the crew on constantly to talk about everything that's going on, including spring practice starting next week. Nate Oates, press conferences, the players talk. We're going to have that for you. Nick Saban, you know, anytime the other coaches talk, which is hardly ever, but we're going to throw them up there. So anything going on with Alabama, we're going to have it right here for you on the Bama Insider YouTube channel. All right, final topic of the night. It's a big one, Jimmy. I'll reiterate my thoughts on this Bama basketball team. I never in my life thought that I would see Alabama as the number one national seed and going into the tournament, the number one team in the country. Now, let me say this. It doesn't matter, because what matters is who's number one at the end. We learned this from Nick Saban. But this team, Jimmy, has a chance to be number one in the end. But let's get them to the Sweet 16. Give me your thoughts on this field and getting past their first-round matchup. It's a playing game, and then they're going to have to play the winner of a scrappy Maryland Terps team and West Virginia, coached by the Huggy Bears. So you got two tough games, the opponents anyway.
Yeah, the second game's really scary. I mean, first of all, you know, before, I know when the brackets come out, everybody likes to fill them in and who's in the Final Four. Well, now that just about everyone I'm talking to out there has probably filled in a bracket already, we can move on to what really matters, and that's your next game. That's what matters to Alabama, and Alabama will play the winner of Texas A&M Corpus Christi versus Southeast Missouri. I'm guessing Corpus Christi. It really doesn't matter which one of the two it is, because Alabama is going to significantly out-talent either one of those two teams. There's no question Alabama will be a big favorite for every good reason in the world. And, you know, I don't think it's going to matter to Alabama. What Alabama has to do is cancel out the noise, you should win this game by 30 stuff, because both of those teams are good teams. They wouldn't be where they are. They wouldn't be playing in the first four if they weren't good. Now, are they Sweet 16 good? Of course not. But they are a good team, and you can be challenged by anybody in this sport when you have a really bad shooting night and you turn over the ball a lot. And both of those things do happen to this Alabama team at times. So yes, Alabama should win their first round game. Yes, they're going to significantly out-talent either opponent, but you still have to play well. Alabama can win with their B game, but you better play your B game, you know, not the C game or the D game, or things can get really embarrassing in a hurry. The real challenge, Mick, though, will be Saturday, whether it's Maryland, who's a well-coached team in the Big Ten, which, well, I think the Big Ten had just as many teams in the NCAA tournament as the SEC with 8. So that should tell you that Maryland's really good, because obviously there's a lot of depth of good teams in that league if 8 teams from the Big Ten made it. West Virginia is another challenge altogether. I personally think it'll be West Virginia, Mick, and this is why. I think the Big 12 was far and away the best conference in college basketball. Mm-hmm. And if you're an Alabama fan that just looks at their win-loss record or looks at their seed and you just start planning your Sweet 16 game, Alabama lost to Oklahoma. They got whacked by Oklahoma. Guess who finished ahead of Oklahoma in the Big 12? West Virginia. I mean, they proved they're a better team than Oklahoma, who beat Alabama. So any team that you're playing from the Big 12 is really good. And Bob Huggins has a ton of postseason experience. You know his guys are going to play some defense. They're going to be good athletes. They beat Auburn, who's a good team from the SEC. I think it's going to be West Virginia Saturday, and I think it's going to be a challenge. And it should be, Mick. When you get to the top 32 teams, you should be talking about good teams, and West Virginia is no doubt a good team. Maryland's good too, and they may beat West Virginia. I think they might even be favorite. I just like West Virginia. I just know I'm not a bracketologist or a brilliant filling out my brackets, but I can tell you this: when I filled out mine this morning, I gave a lot of deference to any team from the Big 12.
Yeah, look, I'm confused by it. It's a rivalry game. Maryland and West Virginia have had a long-standing rivalry. I mean, they recruit the same area. They're not too far apart. They play football a lot. But Maryland's kind of been the basketball school until lately. And then all of a sudden, you know what? They're back, and they're a team that I think that game's going to be a really fun game to watch. As a matter of fact, they couldn't have given the South region and Birmingham better games. I mean, how about Auburn somehow gets there? Which they should be on the West Coast somewhere, but they get to stay home, and they might play Houston in the second round. And Houston's coach isn't too happy about that, and I don't blame him.
No, I don't blame him either. I think that's where the committee sort of made a mistake, and I'm not trying to be mean to my Auburn friends out there by saying, but that's just a break that I didn't know 9 seeds get. I didn't know 9 seeds got breaks, but this 9 seed got a tremendous break. Tell you what, though. Their hands will be full game 1. Iowa's a good team. No doubt they're a good team. And I can see Iowa beating Auburn in round 1. They certainly have a team to do it. But I did pick Auburn in my bracket, though, to advance the second round. I do not have Auburn beating Houston. Houston's coach, Kelvin Sampson, he may complain about the fact that Auburn is his opponent in Alabama next Saturday, but Houston has the much better team. Houston's got more good players than Auburn, although we got to watch the injury situation there with Marcus Sasser. But that said, I think Houston's got too much for Auburn. I like Houston moving on to the Sweet 16 and Auburn to be a one and done.
Jimmy, I've kind of twisted with this question myself today. I'm going to let you into my brain. And I thought, okay, if I went to this, right, if I went up there to watch these games, and Alabama was done playing, they won, and I stuck around for the Auburn game, whoever they were playing, Iowa or Houston. Let's just say it's Houston, just because they're a number 1 seed, just like Alabama, but they're playing in the same arena. Would I cheer for Auburn or would I cheer for Houston? Do I go with the SEC? I mean, most bowl games, I will cheer for the SEC team. Although, sometimes there's certain programs that you don't mind seeing lose, but it makes your conference look better, feel better. If your teams are winning, you get rid of a team that could potentially, beat you in the Final Four in Houston. Or is it just too much? I mean, you just need to put Auburn out of their misery now and move on from it. What do you do?
I approach it differently. I of course, am no Auburn fan by any stretch of the imagination. I don't root for them, but the way I figure all basketball, all football, if it can help Alabama, I don't care that Auburn's the beneficiary, that Auburn wins. If it can help Alabama, the way I look at it, I'm not scared of Houston. Alabama's already beaten Houston at Houston, not scared of anyone with this basketball team we have, but I would like the easiest path possible. And if Auburn can knock off a number 1 seed and make Alabama's journey to the national championship game easier in some manner, in some way, I'm all for it. So I know it's not something that directly benefits Alabama, but I am for top seeds in this tournament losing. And if Alabama plays the College of Charleston for the national championship, that is fine with me. I'm good with Houston and Purdue and Kansas and Texas and Arizona and Baylor. I'm all for them all losing and getting knocked out, and Alabama playing East Mississippi Community College in the championship game. Sounds good to me. So I am going to be for Auburn in terms of, if Auburn plays Houston, I want the number 1 seed knocked out. If it's Auburn, it's Auburn.
All right. Well, comment section, you guys.
I'm sure they won't like that.
No, man.
I'm sure they won't like it. But I explained it. Wow.
It's a tough debate here.
It's pro-Alabama.
Yeah,
pro-Alabama. It's not pro-Auburn.
No, or anti-Auburn or anything. It's just like, hey, it's going to benefit Alabama to get Houston out of the way. This Auburn team has no chance to get to win the national championship. No. They're not good enough, but they're a good team. I mean, they're good enough to beat anybody on a day. Yeah, so I'm curious myself. We'll see what happens. It's going to be a lot of fun, though, watching the tournament. Thursday, the Crimson Tide hit the floor, and we'll see if they can continue the great play, the mastery that they were able to in Nashville where they took the defense to an entirely different level. They came in confident. They led most of the games and never really looked back. And there just came that point in where it was time to pull away, and they buried their opponent. And that's what great teams do.
Yep. And they are a great team. This is a great team. It's the greatest Alabama team I've ever seen. I have been around a long time, Nick, longer than you. I've been around a long time. I did not see with my own eyes or with my own cognitive eyes those Alabama teams in the mid 70s that were really good. I know from the history books, those Alabama teams in the mid 70s were great. But this, from that point forward, I have seen all the Alabama teams. This is the best Alabama team I've ever seen. No matter what happens in the NCAA tournament, I'm going to feel that way. If Alabama is shockingly upset by Texas A&M Corpus Christi in round one, I will still say that's the best Alabama basketball team I've ever seen. Even if they lose, even if they lose at the hands of a shocking upset, I won't change that. They dominated a regular season, then dominated an SEC tournament, winning every game by double-digit points. This is the best Alabama team I've ever seen.
Awesome. Yep, I'm with you. I we'll see what happens, but I just hope that the officiating's good. Let them play. The other thing are the timeouts are a little longer. It's going to help their opponent because Alabama is deeper than most of these teams. But you know what? If they go out there and shoot the three ball, Jimmy, I don't think anybody's going to stop them. I think it all comes down to that because they're going to play defense. Defense it's there. They're going to have better players at, especially early in this tournament than the teams they'd be playing. And then they have that guy right there too, Brandon Miller. But to go out there and get the job done, Alabama basketball, what was it? The 76 team, they lost to Indiana. They went on to win the national championship. They barely lost. I mean, it was like a bucket game. That Indiana team didn't lose a game all year. Bobby Knight, they won the national championship. Bama was just as good. The other team the team that went to the Elite Eight just got hot. They were a mediocre team the entire year. I watched them. They had some good players, but this team has had the bullseye on their back the entire year. And besides the game against Oklahoma, which I don't know what happened, this is an awful performance. They've been formidable.
That's right. And those are good teams. The ones that you mentioned, the 87 team with Derek McKee and Jim Farmer and Mark Godfrey was very, very good. That team also won the SEC. They were like 16-2, I think, in the SEC, like this team. And we're a high seed. We got upset in the Sweet 16. And you're right. That 2004 team that made it the Elite Eight, hey, you can argue, well, this is the team that made it further than anyone else. You got to say they're the best. They were 8-8 in the SEC. I think literally a 500 team in the league. So I think this team has the best resume to date. And I don't think what happens in the NCAA should affect my opinion that this is the best Alabama team I've ever seen. Heck, the Alabama team 2 years ago was really, really good that also won the regular season and the SEC tournament and came into the NCAA as a top seed. They lost a Sweet 16 game to UCLA in overtime. One more team I want to mention is really good. They did not win the SEC, but the WIMP team that lost to Loyola Marymount in the round of 16 with Robert Ory and Latrell Sprewell and James Robinson.
Right.
That was an outstanding team. That was a really good team. But the thing is, Mick, as good as all those teams were, as great as some of those teams were, I don't know if any of them outside of that, maybe that team that lost to Indiana in the 70s, were any Alabama fans those seasons watching that team play saying to themselves, you know what, this is the best team in the country.
Yeah.
I think this is the best team in college basketball. That's what's been the difference with this team. There's been several points in the season where it felt logical, where it felt it was a smart take to say, this may be the best basketball team in the country. And I've never said that before about an Alabama team. I think they went to 5 straight Sweet 16s under Wimp Sanderson. But at no point in those 5 years did I ever say, this is the best basketball team in the country. They were just really, really good and consistent.
Yep. I agree. Well, we'll find out, Jimmy, because this is what you play for. You know,
Right.
you want to make your run now. And this team, if they don't play their best going into this tournament, the way that they are right now, hot and hitting on all cylinders, it'll be a mega disappointment just because this team has a chance, really has the talent and the depth to win a national championship. But look, I'd be glad to just advance. Just get me to the Final Four, and then we'll talk about it on the show.
Well, next time we talk, Mick, I hope next week when we talk at this time, I believe we will be talking about Alabama about to play in the Sweet 16, which is an enormous accomplishment in and of itself. It's as far as Alabama has ever made it on every occasion but once. And it'll just be a big deal next Monday. If we're still talking about Alabama in this tournament, that's a big deal.
Yep. I'll be wearing my lucky shirt, my lucky socks, doing all that stuff. And I'm sure a bunch of you guys will as well. All right, Jimmy, as we bid everyone farewell on this edition of Monday Night QB, what are you working on right now over at BamaInsider.com?
Hey, nobody, we're not ignoring the basketball by any means. I love the basketball. I talk about it every day on the board with everyone, but this is the wrap up of my roster ranking. I ranked the entire spring roster from the best player down to the 60th player. We did it backwards to build excitement. And so this week we're counting down to the big reveal, which is likely to be Friday. Could be sometime over the weekend. But, in terms of answering the question, who is the best football player on this Alabama team as it stands today? Things can change over spring practice or the summer. But as it stands today, who's the best player on the team? I ranked that guy number one, counted all the way down to 60. And this week is the big reveal. This week on Bama Insider is the top 15. The 15, 15, 14, 13 went out today. The rest will come out this week.
Can't wait. Great stuff. And guys, don't forget right now, BamaInsider.com, $29.99 from today or tomorrow, whenever you buy, until August 31st, or $9.99 a month. So be a part of it. We're changing the face of team sites. We got a lot more big things on the way, and we got an all-star crew, including the dean himself, Mr. Jimmy Stein, and Clint Lamb, your trusty sidekick over there on the message board, and Andrew Bone, who I call the guru of recruiting, and Joseph Hastings, and everyone. Just do yourself a favor and go check it out. The Talk of Champions. That's where you'll find Jimmy all the time. Right, Jimmy? 24/7.
That's not really much of an exaggeration.
You wake up and go right back on the board.
Last thing I look at before I go to sleep, first thing I wake up, first thing I look at in the morning.
Awesome, man. Well, roll Tide. Good luck. And I'm looking forward to getting together on Monday and seeing how this basketball team finished the season. So we got a lot to talk about. Next week, we'll talk about the start of spring practice and another fine job. Jimmy, I always love talking to you and the entire crew. And as talking about the entire crew, that does it for our show, brought to you by Westgate Luxury Condominiums right there next to Bryant-Denny Stadium. Find out for yourself, westgateal.com. Whether you're looking to buy a unit or you want to rent one, you can do both. westgateal.com. They are, I promise you, the best. You talk about the oversized balconies, the amazing kitchens, 1 to 5 bedroom units, 900 to 3,000 square feet. You got the oversized balconies, the Skygate Club on the roof, right there next to Bryant-Denny, right there next to Denny Chimes, the Walk of Champions. A guy like me, Galette's. You could go right out to Galette's or Innisfree, or all that stuff on the strip. So campus is there as well. Basketball arenas there, baseball, and all that stuff. WestgateAL.com. And for our entire crew with Clint Lamb and Joseph Hastings and Chris Daughtry behind the scene, and for Jimmy Stein here and the guy that puts it all together, Mr. Kyle Henderson, and the entire On 3 crew. I'm Mick Gillespie. Thanks for watching, guys. Comment section, another great job by you. A+ from the dean. We'll talk to you next Monday. Roll Tide, everybody.